Good morning. With the world going virtual much faster than it was planned, activities like learning, which do not deliver or generate revenue directly, could take a back seat. However, the way out is delivering learning modules the same way that most of the business and company operations are being done now, seamlessly across devices and online. How is EPAM handling it, and what's the way forward? Today, Enterprise Talk has an interesting, in-depth discussion with Sandra Loughlin, PhD Head of Learning Practice at EPAM Systems, to know what is EPAM planning, and as a learning expert, what does she see as the future?
Hi, Sandra. It's great to have you on the show with Enterprise Talk today. I really appreciate this opportunity to have this conversation with an expert on learning technologies and to understand how learning will evolve with the new normal that we are going to face. So, if we can start with the first question, shall we?
Of course, thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, do you see any downsides to learning seamlessly across devices? Would you see any risks of security or data leakage when learners are going to skip from one device to another in the same session or in different sessions? Do you think that poses any kind of risk anywhere?
Well, that's kind of a lot there. I think the answer is with any sort of technology, and certainly in the learning space, there are pros and cons to having constant access and seamless learning experiences. On the one hand, as a learner, I'm not going to have to worry that, what I've done on my computer hasn't saved to my other devices. I'm not stuck to one device, particularly if that device is in the office or it's not charged. And so there's a lot of benefit to being able to access content from a variety of different sources. The downside to this, and there are a couple, are just any sort of increased technology and movement of data from one platform to another just has some degree of inherent risk. Given the nature of the data that tend to transfer in learning environments, it's not certainly as risky as other types of data, but that risk is always there. I think the more significant risk of on-the-channel learning is not technological, it's actually emotional. Just like people are fatigued being home all the time and fatigued being constantly accessible to their employer, constantly having to think see learning experiences on all of your devices at all times can just be emotionally exhausting. There is something to be said for having a place where you learn and having a place where you do work and having a place where you do home. Not to say that, having those silos are better than not having them. But it is something really for learning professionals to consider and really be kind of aware of the potential for fatigue and be kind of proactive about addressing that.
Right. So when you say fatigue while learning, do you think it is having an impact on skills training or any other kind of training for employees at this point in time, especially because they are already quite fatigued, working out of home or not being able to attend, kind of office spaces, which is a little difficult at this point. So, do you think it is posing challenges for skills training being imparted right now at this point in time?
I mean, I think that almost every aspect of our life is being constrained by the current situation, and learning is certainly no exception. People, during stressful times, people already have limited bandwidth for things like learning, even when they're highly motivated, when they see the need and the benefit. There are just so many layers of stress that people are experiencing right now. It's hard to muster the right motivation all the time. I think on top of that, what's really very important from a learning outcomes perspective is the perceived social support for learners. We know that learners tend to be more successful when they are able to learn with others. This is not to say, of course, that online learning is not important and helpful. It is. The research is very clear on that. But there is a limitation to what can effectively be learned online. And I think that, as learning professionals are kind of getting a lot more data coming out of this pandemic, I think it's going to become much clearer what aspects of effective learning can and should happen online through devices, and what really does need to have some kind of live, real-time social engagement.
Right. So with these kind of insights, how does EPAM help to mitigate that risk? How does it try to keep the continuity of learning or the motivation or the interest alive, even while we are feeling so down in so many other aspects of our lives, stuck inside our homes with there's a specter of the pandemic everywhere. Even if we are on the recovery, we still feel that it is extremely depressing at so many levels, as you said. So how does your organization help to mitigate that risk, and also the technology risk, if you perceive any?
I'll do the quick one, I guess, first. So the technology risk is something that, of course, we're very concerned always about data and security. We are lucky that we have such a sophisticated enterprise-wide data security infrastructure that we don't see significant challenges here. We are constantly aware of and addressing any potential concerns, but that's not something that is kind of a big red flag for us. However, the kind of emotional challenges are for every company, of course, but also a lot for EPAM, because a number of our employees work in countries where there's political risk and challenge on top of the health and existing social challenges across the globe, and so this concept of creating a safe space for learning, really working to help motivate and help people feel supported is a big issue for us right now. I've actually been incredibly impressed with how EPAM's senior leadership has responded to this crisis in general, but particularly as it relates to motivating employees. Right kind of when the pandemic started, there was a lot of questions on a number of different fronts. But one of those was, what are we going to do if our employees are not able to be fully utilized because our clients are not sure what they're doing? We need to find a way to keep people motivated, really to push their creativity, and to essentially leverage this crisis in a way that ultimately results in better outcomes for individuals and for the company. And so one of the things that I just really loved that we did for our employees was set up not a competition really, but an environment, a campaign where we asked people to go learn something new that could benefit the company, and to kind of present what they had learned and to take the best of those ideas and turn those into real products or real initiatives or real change activities. And there was such an incredible response to that from around the globe. People, on their own time went and taught themselves entirely new things, really researched and dug deep into areas that they may have been too busy to address previously, or had recently stumbled upon. And the result of that was a significant intrinsic motivation for our employees at a time when motivation was really scarce. And it's also translated into some really cool things that are benefiting EPAM and our clients now.
Right. So I would have liked to ask you what kind of new things your employees came up with, but it's not a part of the questions here. But if you are okay to discuss, would you like to tell us some of the things that the employees came up with as new learnings to help the organization?
Of course, absolutely. There were a number of ideas for products that I know are being actively developed right now. But some of the really valuable things that came out were things that really had to do with employees' sense of completeness as employees. So there were a number of social programs that were started, particularly around families. So we had already had, we call it eKids, kind of a coding boot camp for the little ones. And I think what was really very exciting about this pandemic was that it resulted in a lot more employees becoming aware of this program. The program actually got a lot of significant uplift, and now it has been translated into more languages. There's online versions of it, and we have a number of kids now, employees, children, the children of clients, and a lot of kids in our various communities who are taking this opportunity to learn to code, and becoming really passionate about software engineering. That's one of literally hundreds of different ideas and initiatives that came out of this. But it was something that I know people on my team got really excited about. And it's been a really beautiful thing to see coming out of this crisis.
That's really interesting. And I'm like so glad that I asked this question, even though it was not in the list. So we have something more interesting now. Now, the last question is, do you think at some point the learning delivery for employees will intersect with the skill needs of the companies? And you will achieve a kind of a balance, between the skills that are required and the skills that are being imparted through these omnichannel training tools. Have you reached that point, or do you think you still have to reach there?
Well, that's a really great question, and it is probably the most significant challenge facing any organization. And this is because of a couple of different things. Number one is that the skills that are required for organizations to really be pushing their business models forward, the skills are constantly evolving, which means that the learning environment, the different channels, the different interaction opportunities constantly need to evolve as well. But I think the other and a probably like less appreciated challenge is the fact that when you're trying to align skills and learning opportunities, people need to think well beyond the technology infrastructures. Technology, whether it's on your phone or your iPad or your computer, delivery of instruction is honestly probably the easiest part. It's the thing that can, be scaled very quickly. It can be translated very easily. The delivery of content is the thing that most people focus on, but really it's the easiest thing, and it's equally important to think about how people are then applying what they have been taught. The number one predictor of learning success is the ability to try out what you have been taught and get feedback from someone who is more expert, more knowledgeable than you are. And that's where I think a lot of companies need to focus when thinking about how they are going to marry the skills that are required for their business success with their learning infrastructure. So what this means is the need for significantly more mentorship, more problem-based learning opportunities, more documented experiential learning opportunities and reflections. And so what I hope that this pandemic will show us is a clearer idea of how to really arrange learning and document learning. That's more about capturing skills and less about delivering skill instruction.
Yes, so that makes a lot of sense. But what I'm, seeing behind what you're telling me is that learning is actually a moving target. There is just so much more happening at every point in time that, finally reaching the objective may not be your entire focus. You are saying your focus is largely going to be whether your the skills that have been imparted are measurable and have outcome based features in them. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, so there's a couple of different things here. So one is, identifying what skills are essential for business, and the second is effectively communicating instruction on those skills, and then of course the third is giving people the opportunity to practice and get feedback and document those skills. So each one of those things is a bit of a different challenge. I think the first issue is kind of the alignment of the necessary skills with business strategy. That's a really interesting challenge, and it's one that many companies struggle with, very significantly. And it's something that, really what needs to happen is a much deeper and richer and ongoing conversation between business leaders and learning leaders, and increasingly technology leaders. Because what's really necessary is that the business communicates with IT, like looking ahead 3 to 5 years, what is it that everyone needs to know? What in certain job functions is most essential? And then the learning and development teams need to be able to take those learning objectives, if you will, those skill matrices, and translate those into learning opportunities, so instructional opportunities, as well as practice opportunities, and putting that holistic ecosystem together is a big challenge for a lot of companies, and it's largely because historically business and technology and human resources, learning and development, they've all been pretty siloed, and what's going to be happening, I assume and hope, in the next couple of years is a breaking down of those silos and a real shared dialogue around what skills are essential for the future of the organization.
Yes. So, and I certainly hope that EPAM will be at the center of it when those silos do break down. And as you said, after the pandemic is over, you will be having more insights into what kind of things that employees need to be trained on. And here is hoping that again EPAM is at the center of where things are really happening. So I think we are done here, Sandra. Thank you so much for your time, and really thank you, Karen, for arranging this.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Have a wonderful day.
You too, Karen.
You have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much, everyone, for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That was a very enlightening discussion with Sandra Loughlin, PhD Head of Learning Practice at EPAM Systems, and I thank you for listening to this podcast. Until we bring you another discussion in this chain of conversations, it's goodbye from Enterprise Talk.